So I'm just in the beautiful Schlossgarten in Schlossgarten Charlottenburg in Berlin, Charlottenburg. It's just really beautiful. Am I able to... Yeah, there we go. So, this used to be a private garden for the royals. I'm actually not exactly sure. I'm not gonna say anything incorrectly. But just got me thinking, walking through here, on the topic of climate change. Ooh, this is a doozy for a lot of people out there. So let's talk about climate change, right? So, we have the, speaking of climate change, these guys are important for climate change. The sheepies. Check them out. They're just grazing. They're having a great old time. Not a care in the world. Just hanging out. Very, very cool. Actually, probably the most effective way to mow your lawn. The sheep will just eat the grass and then shit, which is like the perfect, what do you call it? Forgetting the word in English. Dünger, like fertilizer. There we go. So, climate change. So, first of all, let me preface this by saying that the only constant in life is change. So, change, by its definition, means that things are not the same that they were or that they used to be. Whatever it is that we're talking about, right? I mean, humans change physically, like you're born a baby, right? And if when you're a baby, you can't speak, you can't walk, you really can't do anything, and then, you grow and you change and develop a sense of style and preferences and everything. And while we as humans, maybe we resist change, right? Because it's like weird and unknown. But, actually got to embrace it. Because the more you resist it, the more you just push it out into the future. And then probably the more you push it out, the more violent and unforeseen that change is going to be. Right? So, I like that saying. Change is the only constant in life. It's definitely helped me along. So when I've, had some, difficult times or whatever, or if you're, if you can see something is about to change and you want to resist it, just remind yourself that the only thing certain in life is change. Which doesn't mean you should just get up and leave or throw everything away that you've been working on. But again, change is the only constant in life. It's just very simple, really. So, climate change. Climate change. Where do we start on this one? So, okay, I think we'll start with the most obvious and most important thing. It's a fucking psyop. Sorry, excuse me for swearing again. Need to get better on that. It's a psyop. What's a psyop? A psychological operation. Meaning, basically, that there's a whole lot of false information on the subject, A, and B is that that whole lot of false information on the subject gets used to manipulate people in society to enact certain changes, right? So the first exposure of mine to the topic of climate change was when I was 14. It's the first time I actually really thought about it and got into my head. We went to the movies, all of us as a family, and we saw Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. Now, this must have been, I believe, 2006, when this movie was this documentary was being showed in theaters. And, Al Gore, for those of you that don't know, I don't know a whole bunch about him, but he's a successful businessman, and he's made a lot of money off of the climate change agenda. Now, not saying anything against that. Making money is great. It's important. It's fun. However, I think it should be done in a moral and honest and valuable way, which is not something we can say for the climate change agenda or Al Gore for that instance. So Al Gore was just coming off of a losing presidential run. I believe he ran against George W. Bush. I'm not even sure. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. He was just fresh out of politics. And so, he decides to start milking this cash cow of climate change. And he made a really good, or very enthralling documentary on the subject, which freaked me out when I was 14. So, I haven't seen the documentary since then. Actually be interesting to watch it again, like, almost 20 years later. Wow, damn, that's crazy. Almost 20 years later, it's insane. So his basically one of his messages in the documentary, and don't nail me down on this, right? Because I haven't watched it since, like I just said. But his whole thing was like, oh yeah, well, the planet is fucked because us humans are basically putting out too much CO2 into the atmosphere. CO2 causes global warming. Global warming will quicken the melting of the ice caps, which then will have as a consequence that major coastal cities such as London, Sydney, LA, Miami will flood. Pretty scary, especially if you're, 14 and you have this, this respect to appeal to authority, which my parents instilled into me back in the day. So, and I believe that he actually quoted the year 2018, which was, 12 years from when the movie was released. Basically said in 12 years, these major coastal cities are going to be flooded due to humanity's reckless burning of carbon, and that's a bad thing. Right. Okay. So let's talk about this. I mean, where do you even start with that nonsense? Here in this world, in this matrix as I like to call it, fittingly, if you haven't seen the movie, go see it. Just the first one. It's the best one, the most relevant. We are carbon-based life forms, meaning the person that you're seeing right now, or, these two here, or any of this greenery that we're seeing here, this bench, anything and everything that you see is by definition a carbon-based life form. So the premise of saying carbon is bad and needs to be reduced is proportional and wouldn't say equal to, but equivalent to reducing life, right? And, God made this beautiful green earth for humans to live and thrive in. So the premise that carbon, or, the burning of carbon or the releasing of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is something bad or negative is, it's false. It's like saying, oh yeah, you need to go around, killing people and animals and taking down trees because they're made of carbon and that's really bad. No. Nope. So, there we go, debunking that. So that's the first thing. There's just so many things about this climate change thing that you can just so easily pick apart. I don't think you have this so much in the US, but I've traveled around Germany a fair bit over the last few years. If you go to older cities that are by a river, you can see on the walls, which are close to the river, you can see the high water marks. So, eventually at some point flooding occurs because that's just the natural cycle of life. I'm just gonna have a sit down here on the bench. It's quite nice here. So water rising and going above the usual water mark is temporary, if anything at all. Not something to be concerned about. Certainly not a sign that the world is ending. Now, obviously, in the these days where everyone has a camera, everything can be filmed, we see a lot more videos of natural disasters such as, flooding. I think we have some flooding currently in Barcelona and also in the Carolinas in the US, in Texas. So, I'm not trying to delegitimize that. Prayers go out to those people, and hopefully everyone is okay. But point being is that 12 years later, or 2006 was 19 years ago, we actually have not seen Australia disappear. We have not seen Ireland or UK disappear. We have not seen any of the coastal cities flooded. I mean, the cities that have always been flooded, such as Venice, continue to be flooded, and people manage, right? So there's just a massively false narrative attached to that. Another thing that these climate change clowns say is, oh, it's gonna have an impact on resources and not gonna have food that we can feed people with. That has nothing to do with climate change. That has to do with the fact that Monsanto and people like Bill Gates want to genetically modify the food instead of just using the seeds and the crops as they have been used for the last thousands of years to feed people. They want to genetically modify them to make them more resistant to the weather or weed killer or whatever. That's actually destroying and killing the environment, and also the crops and the foods, and also damaging farmers' livelihoods. It has nothing to do with it being warm in summer or it being cold in winter, or it being maybe mild in summer and mild in winter. The planet goes through phases, through ice ages, and through other phases in terms of how the climate is enacted upon us, right? And that's perfectly natural and normal. It's really nothing to be overly concerned about. Another narrative is that, farming is bad for the environment. No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, no. Just no. Like, we as humans, I think I'm going to have to move on. There's so many flies here. We as humans have a sacred relationship with animals, whether that's cows or sheep or dogs or cats, whatever they may be. There's some sort of a exchange and a relationship that happens. Let's say you take a human and a dog, right? I have several buddies. They all have dogs, right? And the dog, apart from, protecting the human and serving as what I like to call a fur missile, they have jobs, right? So you might have a hunting dog that you're going to take out when you hunt duck or geese or whatever, and then you shoot the duck or the geese, and then your dog sprints and gets it and brings it back to you, and the dog is super happy because he was able to bring something to his owner. The owner is super happy because he now has food with which he can feed himself and his family and his dog with. Or you look at cows, or people say, oh, the methane released from the cows is bad for the environment. Again, yes, methane is a greenhouse gas. Okay, greenhouse gas. Let's talk about that, right? CO2, methane. If you have a greenhouse and you increase the concentration of CO2 is released when you have combustion, full combustion, not complete combustion. I'm sorry. Incomplete combustion releases carbon monoxide, which is a deadly gas, and which can kill you if you breathe it in. But if you have complete combustion, CO2 is released, And let me just remind everyone, all these trees that we see here, what do these trees need to survive? They need CO2. CO2 is vital for the trees to take it in, do photosynthesis, and release oxygen. Okay? Now, if you have a greenhouse and you increase the concentration of CO2, what happens to the plants? They grow bigger. Okay? Now, obviously, we as humans, we must breathe in oxygen. We can deal with breathing in a little bit of CO2 because, the air that we're all breathing is mainly, nitrogen, I believe. And then it's like 4/5 nitrogen and like a fifth oxygen, not quite. And then you have a little bit of CO2 and like other noble gases that's in the air that we breathe. So obviously we as humans, we literally need CO2 and carbon in this cycle of life to keep us alive, right? And obviously there can be such a thing as, too much of something, right? I mean, we're certainly not at the point where we have, too many cows that are producing too much methane. We're definitely not there. In fact, we're going actually the other way where, farmers I know this is happening in like England and also in the Netherlands and also partially here in Germany, is where farmers are basically being priced out of their land, and they're given subsidies to, put up solar panels and not farm, not produce food, not partake in this cycle of life, which is vital for us to survive and thrive, right? So no, it's actually cows are not the issue. Methane is not the issue. CO2 is not the issue. We need CO2 to survive. The plants need CO2 so they can produce oxygen for us to survive, right? Pretty simple. Now, that's important to understand. These days, and I think we definitely saw this most obviously when we had the pandemic, which happened, over 5 years ago. Most people live in a constant state of fear, right? They are scared of anything and everything. They're scared of viruses being in the air. They're scared of the weather. They're scared of CO2, a gas that we are dependent on for survival. They're scared of people that have different opinions of them, or people who lean in a different way, politically speaking, maybe. Most people live in a constant state of fear, and that's why the climate change hoax is so effective. I mean, if you look at the actual facts, right? I mean, I remember at the beginning of this year, and I live in Germany, I live in Berlin, so I think the Germans especially are more susceptible to what I would call misinformation or fake news, more so than other countries and societies, because they have a inherent guilt that has been burnt into them of the Second World War and what the Nazis did here in this country. I mean, people my age, I'm in my mid-30s, they'll bring it up just out of nowhere, like, oh my God, die NS-Zeit, die war ja so schlimm. It's like, were you there? Were you like going around like hunting Jews, or like were you part of that? Were you doing that? No, you didn't. But still, you have a inherent guilt about that. So at the beginning of this year, there was like lots of reports saying, oh, it's going to be der Höllensommer des Jahrhunderts. So the summer from hell of the century is going to happen. And, as a matter of fact, I mean, today's a warm day. It's a little bit humid. It's not hot. It's nice and warm. I can go out in my shorts and my t-shirt and just be comfortable. There literally is no summer of hell that we are experiencing right now. It's just garbage. It's just absolute hogwash, right? I mean, last year, kind of had this going on all over Europe, but it was especially extreme here in Berlin. We had these climate protesters glue themselves to the street and blocking roadways, or even gluing themselves to runways on the airport, or defacing art and that kind of thing, to make a point, to make a statement. And it's like, yeah, well, the only statement you're making is that you're just a scared idiot. I mean, I actually saw a group of these people live last year. I walked out of my apartment. I was going, I don't know, somewhere to get cigarettes or whatever, and there was just this group of just, talk about like lost souls, man. I mean, really just broken people. And they'd been arrested by the cops a few minutes prior, so they were all handcuffed, sitting in like surrounded by cops. And at least one of these people had a piece of tar like the size of like a dinner plate just attached to their hand while they were handcuffed behind their back. And so I actually went up to this person and I was like, you realize your hand is never going to be the same again, right? And they're like, oh no, it's going to be fine. I'm like, well, you're going to see. You're going to see. And you're going to learn. And, whether, we'll see how long it'll take. But definitely going to have a host of psychological and mental issues, and physical also. I mean, obviously, if some people had to have their hands amputated because if you mix super glue and sand and then you stick yourself to the road, tar, which is a corrosive substance, your body's not going to respond well to that. But again, that's, I believe everyone has the right to make their own decisions and make their own mistakes, right? Lord knows I've made plenty of those in my life. Luckily, never anything as drastic as that. Although I did have a few close shaves, which we'll talk about another time. And then I also asked this person, like, what are you looking to achieve? I mean, you've just created a large traffic jam, and aren't you all about, oh, cars are bad and burning gasoline is bad? Well, you've just created a kilometer-line traffic jam of people standing there on the street waiting for you to get moved on, burning fossil fuels. Isn't that what you're against? Like, so, the whole climate change thing, I kind of thought like 2018 when none of the coastal cities were flooded, I was like, oh, okay, the cat's out of the bag. It's obviously wrong, and that's fine. I was fooled, and many of us were fooled, and let's move on, right? But it seems actually that it's gone the other way. The propaganda, and what I mean by that is that just the general information being put out there on this topic has been increased manyfold. And, people are just looking to be part of a group, right? Which is why also we see the popularity of religion rising. We have Islam growing in a big way. We also have Christianity growing in a big way. Those are the two main ones here in Germany and in Europe. I really can't speak on the other ones. But we're all looking to be part of a group. We're all looking to be understood and loved and welcomed. And you'll certainly find that in the climate catastrophe change community. And so I think I've said everything that's on my mind on this topic and on this subject. I haven't even gone into Bill Gates and, him buying up all the farmland and wanting to shoot, like a missile at the sun to darken out the sun, and, him saying, we need to cut down trees to save the climate. I'll do that on another day, because I certainly have my issues with Bill Gates, not just on the climate change agenda, but also on his stance and his involvement on vaccines and human experiments and that kind of thing. Yeah, I'm definitely going to make a video about Bill Gates. I mean, I'm surprised he's still walking around. I mean, how that man is not under the prison really says a lot, right? But that's it, and that's that. Signing off and wishing you all a beautiful, pleasant day. Go out and enjoy life.